Sio, o Siwa Nagadua. Welcome here to my home here in Kingfisher Acres, Oklahoma. My name is Choogie Kingfisher, and I will be your storyteller for the day. It's been a while since I've done storytelling, and so this is a wonderful treat for me as well. And I just want to say thank you to Tulsa Public Libraries for giving me this opportunity that I can come and even in this time be able to share my stories. I'm a Kituwah Cherokee storyteller. I am a 2019 Cherokee National Treasure, and so I've been bestowed great honors, but the greatest honor is for my elders to trust these stories with me. And so today I want to share a few of my favorites. You see my table here. I've got several things that whenever I do storytelling, a lot of times I set my table out and just look at my table and say, this story sounds like a good one today. And so today I want to tell you again, as I said, some of my favorites and maybe some new ones too. I know a lot of stories, but I haven't told those stories. And so today may be a treat for you as well. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. When I first started doing this, I asked, of course, my grandparents, my granny and my dudas. I asked aunts and uncles, and of course, I asked my mom and dad. Now, Mom, she always had wonderful stories, and my mother, she was quite animated, as was my grandmother. And so a lot of the stories that I have surround that part of the family. But there are other parts of the family that gave me different types of stories. You see, in our Cherokee world, we have stories that maybe talk about our travels that we had whenever we were placed on this earth in the very beginning. Talks about when we were here or when we were there, how we ended up in the Smoky Mountain region where history finds us. And so there are other stories like the why stories, telling us why this or why that. A lot of times those were told to the young children because there's even today that question of why does this exist, or why is this color, or why is this animal this color. And so those are our why stories. We've also got stories that talk about characters. We have stories that talk about our little ones. We have stories that encompass almost every aspect of the world that you see around you today. And so when I asked my dad, I said, Pop, tell me a story. My dad, he sat there and he thought for a few moments and he said, I don't know any. Now, that was hard to believe because the granny and Duda that told me all those wonderful stories, one of them was his mom and dad. And so I thought to myself, they told me stories, but they didn't tell you. I said, Pop, when you remember, you tell me. It was almost 10 years later. And my dad, he asked me, he said, should you remember that question that you asked me? Oh, there had been 10 times questions over and over. And I thought to myself, Pop, I've asked a million questions. He said it was about the stories. Oh, yeah, now I remember. Do you have one for me? He said, I have one for you. And so we took off driving. You see, many times driving is the best time to share stories. He said, this is a story that your grandma and your grandpa told me when I was a young boy. And he said, it took me a long time to remember everything, but I believe I have everything. And so today, I'm going to say the same thing. I believe that I have everything. And many times these stories, they have a life of their own, and some parts they'll leave out, and some parts a little bit more exaggerated. So we'll see how the story goes today. One day as Stu the Trickster Rabbit was walking down the path, he was enjoying the day, and he happened to look up. And when he looked down the path, there was Wayan, the wolf. Now, we all know that rabbits and wolves don't get along. And so Rabbit, he hunkered down and he thought, well, maybe Wayan didn't see me. And so he waited and he looked around and he made sure that Wolf was nowhere to be found. and he took off running. Oh, he was running so hard and so fast, trying to get away, hoping that Wolf hadn't seen him. And Rabbit ran so far and so hard that his sides began to hurt. Have you ever ran that hard and that fast? I have too. Rabbit, he stopped to take a breath. And as he was standing there, someone or something tackled him. They rolled upon the ground, and Rabbit, he was wondering, he began to scream, say, "Hey, what's going on? What's going on?" And as they began to tumble, by the time Rabbit figured out where he was at, all he could see were sharp, white teeth. And the Rabbit said, wait a minute. And the Wolf pulled the Rabbit back and said, "Oh, gee, Stu, be quiet because I'm hungry." And the Rabbit said, wait a minute. He said, "Let's talk this out." The Wolf pulled the Rabbit back, held him by his ears. He said, "Oh, gee, Stu, tell me what you want because I'm starving to death. It's been days since I've eaten. It's been weeks since I've eaten. I just want to eat. Now hurry up and talk." The Rabbit said, "Why, Jan, look at me. I'm just skin and bones. If you eat me, you're going to choke." The Wolf, he stopped just a little bit. He said, "What do you suggest? Because I'm starving to death." The Rabbit, he was blessed with a very quick mind. And so as he was thinking, he looked at the Wolf. He said, "Why, Jan, what is your favorite food?" "Oh, my favorite food," said the Wolf as he closed his eyes, "is turkey. Oh, I love me some turkey." And the Rabbit, he began to think, turkey. Yeah, while he was walking, there were 5 big tom turkeys on the other side of the field. Rabbit was going to get those turkeys here. And so the Rabbit said, "Why, yeah, this is the deal that I will make you. If you will let me go, then I will get you a turkey." Wolf looked at the Rabbit and said, "How are you going to get me a turkey?" Rabbit said, "Don't you never mind about that. Is it a deal?" Jan thought about it a few moments, and he knew that the Rabbit was considered the trickster of the people. And so he said, "Okay, I guess. But if you try any tricks," Rabbit said, No, I'm not trying any tricks today." He said, "I don't want to get eaten." And so the Rabbit, he began to look around, and he said, "This is what we need to do, Wolf. This is what we need to do." He said, "You see all of these leaves right here in this area?" He said, "Let's pile them up in the middle and make a great big old pile. And we're going to make a dance ground." And so the Wolf, he began to work very hard, as did the Rabbit. And they piled these leaves up in a big old pile. And they made a dance ground. Rabbit said, "Why, yeah, this is what I want you to do. I want you to take your sack and I want you to get into that leaf pile and hide. And when I give you the signal, you jump out and you grab your turkey and we're done." Jan, he was very skeptical. But he took his sack and he waded into the leaves. And he began to scoot down into the leaves. And just before he disappeared, he looked at the Rabbit. He said, "Gee, Stu, is this going to work?" Rabbit said, "Oh, this is going to work." But inside Rabbit's mind, he was thinking, "Oh, I hope this works." The Wolf disappeared into the leaf pile. And the Rabbit took his drum and he began to tap it. He didn't sing. He didn't say a word. He just sat there tapping his drum and he waited. Pretty soon, over the hill came those 5 big turkeys. "Oh, gee, Stu, it is you." I told the boys, listen. I hear G Stu's drum. Maybe he has a new song. Maybe he has a new dance. Gee, Stu, do you have a new song? Do you have a new dance? Oh, you know, us turkeys love to dance. Gee, Stu, he began to smile. He said, oh, I have a new song. I have a new dance. This is the way that we're going to do it. He said, you see this dance ground? I made this just for you. He said, whenever I begin to sing, you're going to begin to dance around this leaf pile. And when I get to the end part, he said, you're going to jump up and down with your eyes closed. With our eyes closed, said the turkeys. Why would we dance with our eyes closed? Rabbit said, that's the way the dance is done. If you want to dance my dance, you dance it my way. Okay, okay, said the turkeys. We were just asking. Let's dance, said the turkeys. And so Rabbit, he began to sing. Call again, he suya, dinya li li, dinya li li. Call again, he suya, dinya li li, dinya li li. And the turkeys began to dance up and down with their eyes closed. Yee! And the wolf jumped out, grabbed the turkey by the neck, and shoved him into his sack. Rabbit thought he was done, but the wolf jumped back into the leaf pile and held up one more finger before the other turkeys opened their eyes. Rabbit shook his head. He knew that he was in quite a predicament, but he would go ahead and sing one more time. The turkeys opened their eyes and saw that their brother was missing. Rabbit said, oh, he danced so hard, he said his legs were hurting. He will meet you at home later. The turkeys were satisfied with that answer as they began to dance again. Kalagin, hiya suya, dinya li li, dinya li li. Kalagin, hiya suya, dinya li li, dinya li li. Oh, they were having a wonderful time. The turkeys, they were smiling, they were giggling, and they were talking. But oh, they were dancing so hard. And the rabbit, he almost didn't want to stop. He enjoyed watching them dance too. Rabbit got to the end part, and the turkeys began to dance up and down with their eyes closed. Yee! Said the rabbit. The wolf jumped out of the leaf pile, grabbed a turkey by the neck, and shoved him into his sack. But just as he was doing that, the other turkeys opened their eyes and saw what was going on. With one step, they took off flying and disappeared off into the woods, afraid that Wolf was going to try to catch them too. Today, whenever a turkey sees you, he will take that one step or a couple of steps and take off flying and disappear into the woods, thinking that you're the wolf and you're going to catch him and put him in the sack. Wolf stood there with two turkeys in his sack. Oh, he was mighty happy. And he looked at the rabbit. He said, gee, Stu, today is your lucky day. You're a good singer. But next time, make the song longer. And the rabbit, he rolled his eyes and shook his head, knowing that he was a very lucky rabbit. And that maybe next time, Wolf might actually catch him. At least that's the story my dad told to me. Well done, thank you. You know, I remember stories like that. And it brings back good memories to me because my dad has gone on to be with the Lord. And when I think about those stories, I remember my dad in that good way. I can tell you what he looked like when he told me those stories. I do that with about everyone that's ever shared a story with me. And over the years, I've gathered many and I've learned many, and many of the people that have given me these stories they've gone on to be with the Lord. And so today I share those stories. This next story is one that I enjoy as well. For those of you that may not know, this is the game of stickball. Now, many times when I travel outside of our Indian Territory area, my audience will say these look like lacrosse sticks. And they are of sorts. You see, this is the game of stickball. This is the very beginning, or what I call the grandpa of lacrosse. Our traditional game, the man-on-man game, is called Untitled Chapter. This game here with the sticks, we also play a game which is a man-woman game. It is a social game. And so these games today are still a very intricate part of our Cherokee world. In that beginning time, when things were beginning to evolve and the new was still there, many of the animals are the ones that brought these games and these tools to us. Again, this story is about Stu the Trickster Rabbit. As he was strolling down the path, he heard a great commotion. And as Stu saw this crowd of people on the edge of the field, he had to know what was going on. And so he pushed his way towards the front. And when he got there to the edge of the field, he stopped. There out in the field were a group of young boys. As he began to watch, he noticed that there were two teams. They would take a ball and they would throw it up into the air and they would yell, "Hey!" And when it would come down, they would begin to wrestle for it on the jodi. One team would get it and that player, he would take off running. But as fast as he was, it seemed the other team had someone just as fast, if not faster. They would catch him and they would wrestle to the ground, and that player would throw that ball to one of his players. And eventually make it to the other end of the field and score. When they would score, there was a great commotion, a cheering of sorts. And Rabbit, he began to get into the game. Every time the ball would get thrown up into the air, Rabbit would yell too. And everyone began to look at the rabbit. You see, there had never been any animals come and watch this game. And so as Rabbit was watching these young boys, every time the ball would go to this end of the field, there was Rabbit running on the sidelines. And the ball would come back this way and Rabbit would run on the sidelines this way. He was so excited. And then some of the boys noticed Stu running back and forth. Said, "Hey, let's let Rabbit play. Stu, no, come on. You can play on my team," said one of the young boys. Oh, Rabbit was very excited. When they threw the ball up into the air, Rabbit seemed to yell the loudest. And when the ball came down, all the boys began to wrestle for it, and there was Rabbit running around on the outside. Rabbit didn't know exactly what to do, but he knew it was an exciting game. And every time the ball would get thrown to one end, there was Rabbit running right beside that young boy. When they would get tackled, Rabbit would jump back and let the boys wrestle for it, and the ball would come back the other way, and there was Rabbit running with another young boy. Rabbit was very fast. One time they threw the ball up, and the boys began to wrestle for it as it came down and hit the ground. And as they were wrestling for it, the ball rolled out of that pile of young boys and rolled to Rabbit's feet. Rabbit didn't know what to do. He stood there in all his excitement, and someone said, "Pick it up and throw it." And Rabbit was so excited, he reached down and picked it up, and with that little bit short arm, he threw it, and it went right there. Everyone stopped. Said, "Gee, Stu, is that as far as you can throw it?" The Rabbit shrugged his shoulders because he didn't know. He'd never thrown a ball before. And so he reached down and he picked up the ball, and with that little bitty short arm, and he threw it, and it went right there. Everyone began to laugh. They began to tell the Rabbit, "Oh, gee, Stu, you are a fast runner, no doubt, but you cannot throw the ball. You go away and you just leave this ball game to us. We know what we're doing." Rabbit left the ball game, huffing and puffing, mad. And as he was walking away, he said, "I'll get back at you." You see, Rabbit was known to get revenge quite often, and many of the things that Rabbit got revenge with, we still have today, and we still utilize today. As Rabbit was walking down the path, he was still huffing and puffing about the situation. And all of a sudden, through the air, he could smell, what is that? Hey, that smells like some good soup. Rabbit's stomach began to growl. Rabbit, he began to look around and he began to follow that smell. And it led him right to town. Rabbit had gotten kicked out of town many, many years ago. And as he stood there on the edge of town, his belly growling, he said, "I really want some of that soup. But if I get caught in town, oh, there's no telling what they'll do to me. But I need to eat." And so the Rabbit, he got down on his belly and he began to crawl around the edge of town. You see, rabbits, whenever they are sneaking, even today to get away from a hunter or from the dogs, rabbits will crawl. You see, they don't always hop. And so Rabbit, he crawled all the way around to where the women were cooking. And he got behind the table and hid. Oh, the smell was driving him crazy, and his stomach was growling even louder. He was surprised that no one heard him. Rabbit, he reached his hand upon the table, looking for something. And he grabbed the handle and he pulled it down. It was a spoon. Oh my goodness, Rabbit began to lick that spoon. Oh, it tasted so good that he had to have another one. He reached his hand up on the table, and just as he grabbed the handle of another spoon, someone grabbed him by the arm, pulled him up from behind the table. It was one of the women. She looked at the Rabbit and said, "Gee, Stu, you know you're not supposed to be here in town." And she twirled him over her head and slung him across the yard. But Rabbit had a smile on his face as he had a spoon in each hand. When he hit the ground, he took off running, and he ran as fast as he could all the way home. He sat there outside of his home licking those spoons until all the soup was gone. Oh, his belly was so big. And he laid there miserable. As he laid there, he took a breath and he held those spoons in each hand. And he began to think. He reached down and he picked up a stone, tossed it back and forth. An idea began to form. He took those spoons and he threw the stone across the way. Hey, that's a good idea. And he reached down and picked up another. And he threw it across the yard. Rabbit said, "Oh, this is going to work wonderful, but I can't see the stone." And so he began to chew the backs of the spoons off. When he reached down to pick up the stone, the rock simply fell out of the back. Oh, Rabbit was disappointed because now he had ruined his spoons. He put them to the side and he said, "I'm thirsty." Maybe a small break will help jog my mind of what I can do. And so as he put the spoons aside, he got up and he took off walking down the trail, headed towards the creek. As he was walking down the trail, he walked into a spider web that had been made across his path. And the spider web got all in his ears. Rabbit was trying to get it out. Oh, yuck, this is nasty. And as he was getting it off of his ears, it got on his hands and he couldn't get it off of his hands. And then he had an idea. He turned around and he ran back home real quick. He began to peel the bark off of the trees and he began to chew it, making it into a string. And he tied a spider web on the back of those spoons. He reached down and picked up another stone. He could see it. Oh, he smiled. He threw it as hard as he could, and it went flying through the woods. He took the spoons, and he put them in his pack, and he took off walking to the ball field. When he got there where the boys were playing, everyone was still gathered around cheering for their favorite player, their favorite team. And Rabbit pushed his way to the front, and there he stood, waiting to be noticed. All of a sudden, a couple of the boys saw the rabbit, and the game stopped. They walked up to the rabbit and said, "Gee, Stu, didn't we chase you off of here once already?" "Gee, Stu," said, "You did, but I've come back." "Why have you come back?" said one of the boys. Rabbit stood up straight and tall. He said, "I have come to challenge the very best player that there is." Everyone began to laugh and giggle. Rabbit challenging the best player? Rabbit must have some kind of trick. There was a tall young man came stepping forward. He said, "Gee, Stu, I am the best player this game has ever seen. I will take your challenge. What is it?" Rabbit said, "If you can throw the ball further than I can, then I will go away and I will leave you alone forever. But if I can throw the ball further than you, then you must let anyone play." The boys gathered together and they thought about it just a few moments and they said, "Okay, now let me get this straight," said the boy. "If I throw the ball further than you, you will go away forever." Rabbit said, "That is right. But if you throw further than me, then I must let anybody play." "That is correct," said the rabbit. "Let's throw the ball," said the boy. Everyone walked to the end of the field. And Rabbit said, "This is your field. You throw first." So the boy took the ball and he reared back and he threw it as hard as he could. And the ball went flying through the air, went out past the goalpost on the end, and landed there next to the woods. Everyone began to cheer and clap for their hero. Rabbit said, "Do you want to try again?" The boy said, "No, I don't want to try again. That's my best throw ever." Rabbit said, "Okay." And so the rabbit, he took the spoons out of his pack. And everyone began to look, what's the rabbit doing now? He took his spoons and he picked up a ball. With one step, he let the ball go. It went flying through the air, out past the goalpost, into the woods, and disappeared. Everyone stood there, not knowing what to say, not knowing what to do. And all of a sudden, someone said, "Hey, do that again." And so the rabbit reached down, picked up a ball, and with one mighty step, threw the ball. It went flying through the air. It went out over the trees and disappeared. The old ones say the ball was never found. Many times they believe that the ball is the moon still circling this earth. Everyone began to cheer and clap. "I want Rabbit on my team. I want Rabbit on my team." Rabbit says, "No, I don't even want to play now." He said, "But remember your promise. You must let anyone play." He threw the sticks on the ground. He said, "There. From this point forward, you boys, you must always use the sticks because you think you're better than everybody else. This will teach you that no one is above the other." He said, "And if I happen to be around, I will come and check from time to time. And I better see that you young men, no matter how young or how old, you better be using the sticks. And for our women and our children, they can use their hands. This is your punishment for acting the way that you acted." With that, the rabbit turned around and walked off. Today, you will see that our young men, our old men, they all use sticks similar to this when we play the game of stickball. Whether it be the man-on-man game, on HOD, or whether it be the man-woman game, our social game. Today, this game is still played, and every once in a while, if you happen to look around, you will see there on the outside edge, Stu the Rabbit, coming to check, making sure that all the boys are using the sticks. At least that's the story that was told to me. Thank you, guys. I got some of my flutes here today, and I want to try to play, and I'm still having to relearn how to play as my hand has gotten messed up, but I know I'm healed, so we're just going to call it healed, and I want to play this song. I don't have songs that I wrote down. Maybe my mind or my heart remembers those tunes, but I play because I love to play. I enjoy hearing the songs that come out. This song is for today. When I began this journey of storytelling some 30 odd years ago, many of the stories that my spirit wanted to tell were the animal stories. Now there are other stories like our star stories, and I share a few of those, some that I've been blessed enough to write and some that have been shared with me over the years. This one is a fairly new one in my telling, I've known it for many years. But this one is the Milky Way Story. In this town, there lived a group of people that their job was to gather the corn and grind it into meal. And they would store that meal in their storehouses. One day, they woke up and they went there to the storehouses, and there was cornmeal all over the ground. Many of the baskets that they had put up were now lying on the ground. They all began to ask what had happened. And no one knew exactly, but there was a dog print on the ground. Oh, not just any dog. Oh, this dog print was huge. They had never seen a dog print that big. And so the people, they all began to discuss it. They said, I wonder where the dog is from. And so that night, a couple of men were chosen to stay up and see what was going on. Early in the morning, before the sun ever came up, out of the west, they saw a very huge dog come out of the sky. That huge dog came directly to the storehouse, sniffed around at the lock, and with one swipe of his paw, knocked the lock off and stuck his head into the storehouse. The men that were chosen, they were so afraid of seeing such a large animal that they took off running and went and hid. And the dog, he had his supper and then disappeared back into the west. They reported what they had seen, and the people, they all came together and they held a great meeting. What is it that we can do that might make this dog stop stealing our meal? If he continues to steal our meal, then we won't have enough to last us through the winter. Oh, they thought about it a few moments, and there were many wonderful and great ideas. But every time someone would come up with one, they would shake their heads. No, we don't want to hurt the dog. We just want him to stop eating our meal. And so the people, they finally settled on one idea. You see, there was one elder man. He said, I know what we can do. He said, so we don't hurt the dog, let's scare it. Everyone said, hey, that sounds like a good idea. What can we do? The elder said, get all the noisemakers that you have. Get your pots and pans and get your sticks, and let's just go and let's hide out. And when the dog comes, we'll begin to beat those noisemakers. We'll make such a loud noise that the whole world can hear. And we will scare that dog and chase him off, so that way he won't eat our meal anymore. The people thought that was a wonderful idea. They went home and they got all the noisemakers that they could. They all gathered around the storehouse and around the grinding blocks, the canoons. And they waited. And they waited. Some even almost fell asleep. They waited so long. But in the early morning hours, out of the west, came this dog trotting through the sky. Again, he came down to the storehouses and he came around the grinding blocks. He looked at what meal was lying there on the ground, and then he went to the storehouse. With one swipe of his paw, he knocked the locks off and stuck his head in and began to eat. "Now," said one of the elders. They all jumped out of the weeds and they began to beat those noisemakers, those pots and pans, and they raised such a noise that it seemed that it was heard around the world. The dog, he was so frightened that when he pulled his head out of the storehouse, he began to look around, not knowing which way to go because the noise was all around him. And with big, huge eyes of fright, he took 2 giant leaps and he disappeared off into the west from which he came. And out of his mouth dripped the cornmeal that he had been stealing. The dog never returned. And so what they had shared or what they had done was a success. Today we all look up into the sky and look there to the west and we see all the sprinkles of stars and we smile because we remember that this is the way the dog ran. At least that's the story that was told to me. Thank you. I've got a few more items here on my table, but I've got one more short story for you. I say short. None of my stories are short. But it's another star story. And this star story, I really like this story. You see, when I travel down to Alabama, I see all these tall pine trees. And that's my favorite time to tell this story is when I see those pine trees. I enjoy this story, the pine tree and the Pleiades. In this town, there were 7 young boys. And these 7 boys, they were the best of friends. They'd done everything together. But there was one young man. He seemed to be the leader of them all. You see, every time he said, let's do this or let's do that, the other boys, they were all in agreement. Yeah, let's do it. And so, every morning it seemed, before the mothers could ever assign chores, the young boys were up and off and running around. The mothers, they would complain, say, "Oh, these boys, they don't do anything. They just play. We need to teach them a lesson." And so all the mothers came together and said, "What kind of lesson can we teach these boys?" "We need to teach them," said one, "that if they want to eat, then they must work. Everybody needs to chip in when it comes time for chores." And so, to punish the young boys, they made stone soup. Have you ever had stone soup? Whenever I was in Cub Scouts, we had stone soup. You see, stone soup is just boiled water with rocks in it. When the boys came back from playing all day and the sun had gone down, oh my goodness, they were so hungry that when they came into the house, each one grabbed a bowl and took a big old dipperful of that stone soup. Oh, and they were so hungry they couldn't wait to eat. And as they began to eat, "Hey, what is this?" they said. "It doesn't even taste like anything." And one young boy reached a spoon deep into that bowl and pulled up some of the rocks. "Look, it's just stone soup." The boys threw the soup on the floor, and in anger, each one ran out of the home. The mothers tried to tell them, said, "If you want to eat, then you need to stay home and you need to work." But the young boys, they were so upset that they ran out to the stomp grounds. They ran out there to the square and they began to dance around the fire. that eternal flame, that sacred flame, that was wrong. You see, that sacred flame, when we dance around that, that's a time to pray. That's a time to reflect on things and talk with the Creator. That's not a place of anger. And so when the boys began to dance around it, they knew that they were breaking the law. As the boys began to dance around, they began to grow angrier and angrier because the mothers continued to try to talk to them, getting on to them. And the boys danced faster and faster. Pretty soon they began to rise up off of the ground. The mother's anger turned to fright as they saw what the young boys were doing, and they begged them to stop. But the more that the mothers begged, the faster the boys began to dance. Someone ran and told the chiefs. Someone ran and told the medicine people, and they all came to talk the boys out of dancing. But the boys danced faster and faster, and they began to rise up off of the ground. The medicine people, they shook their heads because there was nothing that they could do. And one mother, she was so upset that she jumped up and grabbed her son as he came by, grabbed him by the ankle and pulled him down. And she pulled so hard that as she pulled him out of that circle, he landed on the ground and sunk into the ground. The mother had lost her son. She fell upon her knees and she began to cry, letting her tears water that soil where he had gone in. The other boys, they continued to dance faster and faster until they disappeared into the sky. The mothers, they cried because there was nothing that they could do. The head men and the medicine men, they just simply shook their head. And they pointed to the sky and said, let this be a lesson to those that each one needs to take part in our chores. That when we come around this fire, we are to pray, not with anger, but with peace. When we look up into the sky, and when we look there where that boy disappeared, let us always remember. You see, as he said that, where the mother had cried, there sprang up a small shoot. And soon it began to grow taller, taller. It was reaching for the other boys in the sky. It was that seventh boy. It became the pine tree, so tall and so straight. That's why whenever you look at the stars that are now the constellation called the Big Dipper, we know that those boys dancing there are also kin to the pine tree. You see, when you burn a pine tree log, pay very close attention because the sparks will begin to fly. And if you watch those sparks, they will begin to jump out. And they are little stars. They are one and the same. In the sky, you will see those stars, and they say that that boy that was the leader here on earth, the one that told the other boys what to do in the sky, he is the dimmest star because he had never learned. The pine tree and the stars are one and the same. And we still acknowledge that to this day. At least that's the story that was told to me. I hope you've enjoyed yourself here today. I've enjoyed sharing my stories with you. And until next time, you be safe out there. Well, don't. Choogie.